Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. The New Stack thanks the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from KubeCon plus Cloud Native Con in Austin, Texas. Learn more about cloud native technologies and the projects that are defining modern application development, deployment, and management at cncf.io. Hey, it's Alex Williams with the New Stack here for day 2 of the big conference here in Austin, Texas. It's KubeCon day, and we're talking, though, about CNCF and its future. And I'm joined by 2 distinguished gentlemen of the community, and perhaps you guys can introduce yourselves, and then we'll get started right away. Chris?
Sure. My name is Chris Aniszczyk. I basically serve as COO of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and kind of have been around since the beginning of the formation days of the CNCF.
My name is Alexis Richardson. On the CNCF, I'm the chairperson of the TOC, the Technical Oversight Committee, which decides which projects go into the CNCF and other such matters. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of Weaveworks, one of the coolest companies in the Kubernetes space.
All right. Woo!
Thank you,
Nice.
Alex.
High five.
Get that pitch in. Perfect.
Good man.
That's awesome. So how many projects are there in CNCF right now?
I've lost count.
14.
14. Nice.
We started with 4 this year.
Started with 4, so you added 10.
10. So that's
Is
decent
that the
clip.
pace for next year too?
It's a marathon, not a race.
Yeah. We don't dictate, a pace or anything, right? So we do have 6 projects that have been formally invited to the proposal phase that are currently in queue.
Okay.
So projects like Spiffy, Rook, Open Policy Agent, Istio, and so on are currently going through the community due diligence period. So we have the potential to add at least 6 projects if they get voted in over the next few months after due diligence.
And then we have storage and networking, of course, which will be quite granular areas, but potentially there could be a few projects.
So how do you guys think about what projects to invite?
I think there's obviously there's a natural gravity of some projects just wanting to be part of CNCF now that we've kind of grown as an organization, so people will peer and interact with TOC and say, hey, can you please take a look at what we're doing? We'd like to present to the TOC, and kind of a formal process in that place. Kind of in the earlier days of the foundation, I think we were doing a more holistic view of the kind of the cloud native landscape to see, there's this project out there, Envoy looks pretty good. Let's go talk to that community and see if they would potentially be a good fit for CNCF. So it's kind of a bit of a pool, of us evaluating what's going on there, and people just kind of showing up and say, we would love to be part of this community.
You've seen the landscape diagram.
Yeah.
Now, you might think we throw darts at it.
Yeah.
The actual answer is it's probably kind of the middle section on the left is most interesting to us. So sort of containers, orchestration, services, routing, maybe some things in app def and security properties. But we don't want CNCF to become the foundation that does everything. That would kill us, I think.
Absolutely.
That is what? That is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be terrible. And we've got to be stuck on our cloud native mission.
So what is that?
Microservices, containers, ubiquitous programmable infrastructure.
Yeah, it's very simple.
And what are your values?
Trust, freedom, speed.
Vendor neutrality, cloud neutral.
Developers, projects first, very important value. No kingmakers, not a standards body.
The no kingmakers things is huge.
So that helps you dictate then what gets into what becomes part of the CNCF, doesn't it?
If you have a project of quality, which has a real community around it and is very promising for a meaningful use case that solves a real problem, and it's cloud native and it's open source,
we'd love to hear from you.
Get in touch. We should also mention the tiering concept.
Correct. Yeah.
So there's a concept of Inception Project, which is much more experimental, a bit like a seed stage VC, where things may go wrong.
We expect some to fail, some will succeed, but this is a way for us to express that we would like to take a chance and bring it into the CNCF community, because we think that the notion of what the project is trying to solve in Cloud Native is actually useful. So I'll take the example of Linkerd, right? When we brought Linkerd, we brought it as an Inception project. We thought the value of the notion of a service mesh, a fancy kind of L7 reverse proxy, is something that we need to support and cultivate in Cloud Native. Envoy came along, which is another kind of project in this space. Linkerd announced Conduit yesterday, so I think the TOC was right in saying, hey, we should take a stab at this to spread this practice across the industry, and we're seeing service meshes kind of flourish and explode now after a year or so.
It really is. Really is. So you must have to look at kind of the trends there too, to think about what are the projects that are reflected in kind of these trends that we're seeing emerging. Pretty much, right? So tell me more about the Inception program then. I'm curious about that. So how does that work?
So like Alexis mentioned, it's another kind of stage of maturity when it comes to a project. When a project gets proposed, they have to select which stage they're at, whether it's inception, incubation, and eventually they can apply to graduation whenever they feel they're appropriate. The key thing with Inception is those projects are reviewed on an annual basis, and essentially at that time we decide whether it's worth to keep the project at the same level, maybe move it up to incubation, or maybe even graduated, or maybe we're not a good fit anymore to be in the foundation, and so the project may leave or be archived depending on its state.
Okay.
Yeah, the Inception Stage was created because people valued the open, collaborative, safe space created by the CNCF for projects. But we were being approached by projects that valued that opportunity but were really too young to get over the bar that we'd initially set. So after a lot of discussion, we decided to create this kind of entry room.
So how many projects do you get approached? How many projects approach you? How many people? I'm trying to get a good grasp on kind of the volume of projects you see coming in your doors.
We've had, I looked at the numbers, I think we had 28 projects present to us over the history of CNCF. Not all of those formally applied to essentially, get invited. So I get pinged probably, I'll say on a weekly basis from different folks interested in potentially being part of CNCF. So I think, as we've changed over a couple years, CNCF obviously is in a, better place than maybe when it was a year ago or when we first started, so we're definitely more visible. So I'm definitely seeing an uptick in terms of interest in being part of CNCF. But I think we have to always make sure to be focused on bringing in high quality projects, and then when it's right, take a kind of a conscious effort to take a bet on Inception level projects that are relevant to the mission we want to move forward.
What are you looking for in these projects? What are some of the characteristics that you see as important that ensure that for you that they are high quality?
Things like frequency of releases, whether they have patch their releases immediately after they have a bug, that kind of thing.
Diversity of committership, right? Multiple companies involved. Adoption. It's always nice to come across projects who formally list their, adopters. So, good social community presence, like responding to issues. So just things that are vibrant, things that are representative of a healthy, vibrant community.
So frequency of releases is one. What about the scope of the project? What about the community itself in terms of how it's developing? What are you looking for in that respect?
At a minimum, having transparent, governance or something in place in terms of how they grow their maintainership is a useful thing. It's one thing that we actually help out projects a ton when they come into CNCF in terms of advising them to, here's how you should structure your governance to be open, neutral, and so you could add more maintainers in kind of a fair way. And we've seen this kind of evolve over time. When Containerd came into CNCF, it had kind of a traditional, what I would call BDFL model. There's a Benevolent Dictator for life in Solomon, in Solomon as being the BDFL in that case. But over time, as the community grew, they evolved, and now they have a more open, neutral governance. It's kind of a flat, technical steering committee. They dropped the BDFL model as of the 1.0 release, which happened this week. So we see these things evolve, and CNCF's there to help guide projects with these type of things over time.
Is the Benevolent Dictator for life a done concept?
a bit cheesy to me.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Linux, some of our, you look at Python, Linux, right? These are very successful projects, but, I think depending on the state of the project, maybe early days, you could start with a, BDFL, but over time, I think you have to, the arc moves towards open governance. I think it's the only way to do things fair.
I always thought it was a funny term anyway. A benevolent dictator. There's a weird history there with benevolent dictators. They're real nice. They're real nice, but then boom.
I know it's challenging. I think the reason it still works for Linux is because like Linus and Greg KH are actually they work at a neutral foundation. They're fellows at the LF and not actually at like a single corporate entity, right? So if you're at BDFL and you're at a company, like how do you split those interests between the projects and the commercial things? It's complicated, but.
So what are some of the things you guys want to do next year beyond just introducing new projects? Or what are some of your larger goals? I mean, this reflects, I think, more in your philosophy of the CNCF and how it evolves over time, but plus kind of the direction of the technology and the people
build
part
brand
of those
around cloud native is an important goal. Building the cloud native brand.
Okay.
As the foundation grows, with more projects, that can create confusion, so we need to simplify. And that needs to be underpinned by educational, strong messaging around what problems are we solving, why do we exist, what are the things you need to be thinking about as a customer, and perhaps as a business, what do you need to be thinking about in terms of how to consume this? Do you need an enterprise edition, or is there some other story? What's the certification story? So there's a whole raft of things to be done there. I believe, Chris, you're doing a lot of things in things like training as well and education, certification.
We have a certified Kubernetes administrator program. We're actually about to spin up something called CKAD, which is Certified Kubernetes Application Developer Program. So mostly focusing from the app dev perspective. You don't really care how to operate Kubernetes. You just want to write applications on top of it. And we're essentially looping in other CNCF projects. So you could actually, here's how you use Prometheus to monitor your application, and we'll plug that into the actual training programs. Other things that I'm kind of interested from a foundational perspective is, we've recently launched principles in CNCF in terms of how we evaluate projects and how we operate as a TOC. I want to treat these things as kind of living documents. So for me, maybe same time next year, we do a version 2.0 of those based on lessons learned and so on. Other things that I'm personally really excited about is now that we essentially have all the major cloud providers part of CNCF, right? There's some interesting things you could do when you actually have people sitting at the same foundational table, right? We have a serverless working group. We're essentially having these companies collaborate together to see, hey, can we build some minimum specifications or projects that help us essentially maybe have functions become a little bit portable across the cloud. So I'm really interested now that we actually have all these companies and projects at the same table to see what we actually enable next year.
So branding. So why branding? This seems like the cloud native brand has a pretty high profile right now.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, there's some confusion, and within CNCF at least, I think our projects arguably have a hell of a better brand than necessarily the foundation itself. So, here most people probably know about Kubernetes. I guess maybe they finally, what's the CNCF thing? Okay, I guess they're putting on the events.
Well, so we still want that to be. I mean, the brands of the individual products
should be first. Should be first.
Absolutely key. But we also want senior executives who read the Wall Street Journal and Harvard Business Review to make funding decisions like they used to. Are we going to go into cloud this year? Are we going to do digital transformation this year? We're going to go into big data this year. Because my CIO came to me and said, it's going to be this amazing $50 million project or $500 million project with big companies, and we want to do this because we're going to speed up our delivery. So go do it.
So providing higher visibility in the larger organization itself.
Absolutely, and also with mom and pop. I mean, I'm still, despite the amazing conference here, I struggle and will struggle this Christmas as I do every Christmas to explain what I do.
What you actually do.
But that's not.
It's made more complicated by the fact that my dad and my mum are ancient Greek professors, so that Kubernetes, what is this Steersman thing?
They appreciate the logo. So.
Yeah. Well, that's a consideration in terms of getting more well known in the larger community out there. That seems to go hand in hand with making more visible, kind of this new practice that's emerging around application-oriented development.
Yeah,
I call it GitOps.
GitOps, yeah.
GitOps, yes.
There you go, yeah.
Yes.
Fresh in your mind.
Yes. How apropos.
I'm going to write that on your hat.
You know, when I look around, like, I think, the last couple of years we've been very focused on kind of like the infrastructure operator kind of the house, making this easier for these type of folks. I would be happy if next year we're here at the same time and we have a much larger kind of app dev, application dev focus. I hope the next year involves actually making it easier.
If we didn't overlap with Spring One platform.
That helped.
Yeah.
How'd that happen,
it is not.
by the way?
It is not a buyer's market for conferences right now. It is a pain in the ass to get a venue and everything.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
And next year you guys have Copenhagen. You'll have Shanghai.
China, KubeCon China for the first time.
And Seattle.
And Seattle. Yep.
Yeah.
So why'd you add Shanghai? What are you seeing happen in China?
Both Dan and I, Khan, who's the executive director of CNCF, we've been to China probably almost a couple of handfuls of times this year. The amount of growth in terms of Kubernetes there is amazing. There's some companies there that literally never even went to virtual machines. They're like directly skipping, skip VMs straight to containers, right? And so the demand has been amazing. We had Alibaba, ZTE, Tencent all sign up as members. Huawei's always in part. So we have a large community there. It's about time we actually had an event to.
I can't believe we've got to 2/3 of the way through this, and we haven't mentioned Lambda or functions or.
I mentioned a little bit of serverless. Yeah.
Tell. Well, I was wondering what I missed. So.
Well, I talk to investors, and they'll say things like, "Oh yeah, people can all go straight to serverless."
Yeah, exactly. Don't even
It's like,
by the time you even package a container, you just might as well write a function and be deployed by now before you even worry about
suppose
anything.
So what do you say to them when they say that? I mean, when they say why?
It depends if you like them or not.
Yeah.
I mean, functions are an application pattern that is emerging. And there are other application patterns. There's a lot of legacy apps. Lift and shift is still a thing for the cloud. And then you have containers and microservices and machine learning. And some of these things lend themselves well to the functional paradigm, and some of them don't.
Yep.
I think we'll see a decoupling of the economic model from the application framework.
Yep.
I mean, Azure already charges it by the second. It aggregates up the containers, which is kind of the same thing. But as for projects, it's
what projects are showing up that have a serverless function-oriented?
OpenFast,
Kubeless. Yeah, it's
OpenFast. Are they under consideration then?
So a lot of this discussion is happening in the serverless working group, and right now the first thing they're kind of focusing is on like specs. There's an open events thing going on. If you go to openevents.io, there's some description in terms of the work they're going on there. Similar how if you look at storage, there's the CSI work coming on, right, and then storage projects may come follow, just like we did CNI. CNI was there, and now like networking projects are potentially being considered. So I think in serverless you'll see that same pattern where we'll work on some like eventing specs, and then maybe, hey, I want to build my own like Lambda type thing or own function as a service thing. How do I do that? And we'll bring
if functions and serverless are going to be as big as their most optimistic supporters believe, then there's going to be a lot of different variations of functions in serverless. So actually it's going to be super important to support, eventing paradigms in the same way that we're looking at storage paradigms, CNI as a networking paradigm. Yeah. This creates an industry or industrialization effect, which I spoke about yesterday in my very, very brief 5-minute keynote that I was so excited about. It's called componentization, which is something that, I don't know if you looked at the talks by Simon Wardley. He talks a lot about these kinds of phenomena of not standardization, but componentization coming into an industry and then allowing a phase shift in terms of velocity. So we really want customers to be able to build awesome apps really fast because they've got a toolkit of components, and those take various different shapes and sizes. So for serverless, it's still a little bit of the Wild West down there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think things like the eventing format will be more useful. It'll mean that more systems can integrate with serverless as well. And you might have seen Microsoft launch something called vKubelet yesterday from Gabriel's team, which is designed to make it easier to integrate serverless type paradigms with external things, for example.
That industrialization story is interesting. Talks to the larger scope, I guess, in some respects around what you're saying about the brand, right? And helping, tell the larger story out there. The scope, though, becomes quite large as it becomes quite wide when you start thinking of it in that context.
Well, if it's a business scope, it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's business scope, which is a different kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what is it that Jassy is making now? 18 billion?
Yeah. Yeah, he's
So,
doing pretty well for himself.
It'd be really great if cloud native companies could
Yeah,
make
and,
18 billion.
Yeah, well, why we ended on that note, right? That sounds good. Doesn't that sound good?
It does sound good.
Well, good luck to you guys. You guys done a fantastic job this year with the CNCF, and this conference has been really great. A lot of great conversations that we've had, and good luck in the next year.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Alex.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
We'll see you next year.
See you next year.
Absolutely.
The New Stack thanks the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for sponsoring our podcast from KubeCon plus Cloud Native Con in Austin, Texas. Learn more about cloud native technologies and the projects that are defining modern application development, deployment, and management at cncf.io. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcast. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.